Welcome to Alive to Thrive here on KNSJ 89.1 FM. Remember, we are not on this earth merely to survive, we are alive to thrive. Today, we are honored to have Todd Crandell with us, Ironman legend and founder of Racing for Recovery. Todd, would you like to introduce yourself?
I think you just did it.
I did, I guess, didn't I?
Yeah. I'm Todd Crandell. I'm grateful to be alive. I'm honored to be on your show, and I know this is going to be a killer conversation today that's going to help some people.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've done a lot of looking into your history and how you came to be the person you are. Running, we were just discussing before we went live on the show. He's ran 124 Ironman up to this point, and to have that type of mental endurance and fortitude is absolutely astounding. How do you feel about going into is this your 125th will be tomorrow?
It's my 124th tomorrow.
Okay, so that'll be
Yeah.
tomorrow. It'll be your 124. How do you feel going into it?
I feel I just did another interview before this one, and I don't know if I think it has to do with this beautiful island. I've never been able to conquer the anxiety of these things. As much training as I've done, as much racing as I've done, to overcome the anxiety is really the battle for me, especially the swim. And right now, as we're talking right now, I have this just overwhelming sense of being calm and not necessarily being anxious, but just being excited, which is a positive word for anxiety. And really, again, the three words I live my life on: empathy, humility, and gratitude. I'm so grateful to be back in this beautiful island. I'm grateful to have Racing for Recovery be reaching people. I'm just happy for my life, and I'm ready to go tomorrow. It's going to be a beautiful day.
I think that that's so exciting, and from your other interviews, I know that racing portion. I don't think people take in consideration why that you people can be fearful because people have lost their lives. It's a serious thing. People have drowned.
Yeah, a lot of times, people will, I don't think they really understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm certainly not telling people at Racing for Recovery, hey, if you want to be sober, you have to do 100 Ironmans and, get a bunch of tattoos and like Motley Crue the way I have, but the word racing really is moving towards a better way of living. And for me, the Ironman, yes, it's a very physical, mental, challenging event, but it's more about encompassing that mindset and channeling it into other areas of our life, like a physical aspect, a mental aspect, educational, volunteering. So Ironman to me is taking the mindset of what it takes to do an Ironman and doing it properly, training properly, so you don't have some of the unfortunate things where people drowned, and really that's from just not really being prepared, I think, a lot of times. So kind of like life, we have to prepare ourselves for it, and we certainly have to prepare ourselves for doing an Ironman.
Well, and that's wonderful that you can get yourself into that state of mind, like you mentioned, that state of calm. It's like that calm before the storm. You know you're going to be okay. You're very confident. Coming up on, your 124th, I can imagine you're incredibly confident at this point. Tell us a little bit about your backstory, and your younger years. I know that you had a love for hockey. And that was huge. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, let me just say this right now, that the Edmonton Oilers are going to win the Stanley Cup this year. So,
All right.
David, get a hold of me. Anyway, my backstory is interesting because it starts with the suicide of my mom for her drug addiction. My uncle killed himself from a drug addiction. My aunt killed herself from a food addiction. So 3 out of 4 kids on my mom's side of the family suicided. So one would logically ask the question, well, what the heck was going on in there? And as a licensed clinician now, I truly believe that most people that are suffering from addiction are doing so because of some unresolved trauma. And let's not get into what's trauma and what isn't trauma. Trauma is all relative to the individual, right? And people just don't know how to cope with some of these horrible things that happen, divorce, God forbid, some type of abuse or bullying. People are going through some stuff. And if you have a genetic predisposition to addiction and mental health issues, and you use not so productive things to cope with that, well, you're going to have some problems. So for me, my coping skill was hockey when I was a kid, and it worked for a while until I made a choice to try alcohol because I wasn't healing from the emotions of how it was for me losing my mom. And that's when things went off the rails for the next 13 years with my drug addiction. And for the past, 32 years in sobriety, it's just been a constant journey of understanding the impact of trauma. It's not an excuse, it's just an awareness. And then having the opportunity and the ability to make good choices to cope with that trauma effectively and live a lifestyle that the individual wants to live. And that's what I've been doing for a long time now.
Absolutely. On one of your documentaries, you said you know that you got it when they put a sticker on your coffin and you're done, right? And when you and like learning to Jim Rohn talks about this, like to deal with the winters in our life, because the winters are coming and some are short or some are long. But if you're going through the winters wishing it was summer instead of like being sufficiently prepared or and like working through life's trials in a positive way with the right mindset, you can really make positives and like or learn skills on ways to adapt and work through that trauma in a healthy way, like you mentioned playing hockey or running and exercising because of the release of endorphins and whatnot. I think a huge part of it is those activities rewire the brain because when we have those traumatic events, because it's such an emotional event, it's like if you get in a car accident 10 years ago, you can remember it just like it was yesterday. But when it comes to other things, it's like if you can focus on something positive and having an incredibly positive emotional, impact, you can help rewire your subconscious in a deeper way. That and repetition, those two things I've heard have helped consistently. But it really does when you understand the how the trauma actually changes the way that the brain functions and ways that you can choose to reprogram it. Um, it makes dealing with it a lot easier, and that it's not. I think there's a lot of people that feel hopeless because they don't feel like there's a way out, which can lead to suicide. I've lost a lot of friends, and I'm so sorry to hear about your mother and your family members because it's like a black hole for a family. It just sucks everyone else in because everyone else blames themselves. And so, learning a positive way to respond to that and work through it, you can reprogram the way in the brain in a sense.
What My friend, we could take this interview in so many different directions from what you
Yeah.
just said right there. And I agree with everything you said. In our second book, There's More Than One Way to Get to Cleveland. I start the book off, talking about, you know, suicide and what I was going through at that time. And I was 12 or 13 years sober at that time. So I people don't understand the impact of that trauma. And you're not, and again, and you said this very well, and I'm kind of repeating it, what it changes to the body physically and neurologically. I don't think we've even cracked the surface of really the impact that makes. But on the other side, exercise, and for me being a plant-based nutritional guy, food and proper food and healthy exercise in a balanced manner. Oh my God, the endorphin rush, as you said, the physical rush, the emotional rush that comes from that. When you do that consistently, no different than when consistently using drugs, right? You just take that same tenacity into self-destruction and you put it into self-betterment, you're going to see some changes. And I'm sitting here with our two friends, these geese out here, as we were talking about, but I'm like, I watched the Ironman Hawaii while I was snorting cocaine all those years ago. And here I am again out on this island for the 10th time, living this lifestyle. And my message is this can be you, in your own way. You can recover and do whatever you want in sobriety, right? So just go out there and get it done, but know it's going to be difficult. Like the winters are going to come. Okay. But put a coat on and get out there and do some shoveling, right?
Absolutely, 100%. And I remember you mentioned that when you finished your first Ironman and you met your wife and your kids, that other than like having your children and like being with your wife was and getting married, that was like the biggest rush you'd ever had. And you're like, I'm doing this again.
Yeah.
When you were going, you'd found hockey in those teen years. That was helping you develop. And you had a story where you were snorting cocaine on the bus on the way to a game, and the coach busted you, and he took you out of the league. I know that and like having your dad hold you back from playing with the future leagues, that
Mhm.
those like deeply impacted you because they like took away your coping mechanism. Do you feel like if that hadn't have happened and you had continued forward in hockey, like if you had been sent to with the older league, that you may have chosen a different path in the first place?
This is a great question, and it's funny. If my dad was sitting here, he'd still tell you that he made the right decision, and I would tell him, "No, you made the wrong decision."
Right.
But honestly, what would have happened was I may have made it to that higher level that I was on my way to achieving, but I would have screwed it up. That's the honest answer. And I don't know if I would have lived. I don't think I would have lived too much longer doing what I was doing. There's a former goaltender who died from drinking and driving, played for the Philadelphia Flyers. His name was Pelle Lindbergh. And he got drunk and was driving his Porsche and crashed it into a telephone pole and died. And that basically would have been my story. I I had no intentions of stopping drugs at that point. Someone had to like try to stop them for me, and that's what my coach and my dad were doing. So I hold them. I don't blame them for anything. They were doing the best they could with me at the time. Um, but they took away my lifeline. But the truth is, I was giving it away. So my choices were giving away hockey. It wasn't really taken from me. And over the course of being sober, I now fully acknowledge my fault. I did that. And the blame game and all that ended a long time ago. But I would have been another statistic of, wow, what an exceptional athlete that ruined it with drugs and alcohol. That would have been me. I wasn't meant to be a hockey player. I was meant to be a former hockey player who now does Ironmans and works with Racing for Recovery.
Yeah, it's interesting looking back at your life. I know Steve Jobs has a quote where he says, "You can't connect the dots looking forward, but you have to trust that you can connect the dots looking back." And that the things that are happening, where you're headed, that as long as you set that goal, of looking up, and that's huge. The mentality of alive to thrive in my mind is being alive to thrive is that if you're consistently focused on the past and what's happened to you and you're living in that, people get stuck in the past and the present and they're not moving forward. It's like trying to walk up a flight of stairs and consistently looking back and saying, am I more comfortable back there? And taking two steps back. You're never going to get to the top of the stairs, right? The same analogy with fear or faith and moving towards your goal. If you're looking up towards the goal or towards the finish line, that's the direction that you're essentially going to be headed. And where your attention goes, energy flows. Um, my question, I think other people like to know as well. After I believe it was your third DUI is when you decided to get sober, and from that point on, you were sober. Was there a moment during that time that you decided definitively, like, I'm going to change? Or is there someone that impacted that decision?
Well, this is interesting that you're bringing this up, and I never BS anybody. I got a phone call today from a guy who at the time was 16 years old who watched me get that final DUI. I had been on a bender for a few days or whatever, and I got a flat tire and went into a Jiffy Lube to use the phone to call for a ride so I could keep drinking. And while making that phone call, I relieved myself, I guess is a proper way of saying it, all over this manager's desk in his office. And
Oops.
there was a kid in there who saw me.
Oh no.
Now, 10 years later, promoting our first book, I was on a Detroit radio station talking about this story. That 16-year-old was now 26 and having his own drug and alcohol problems, was listening to the show.
Wow.
He calls me, calls on the show and goes, I was there. I was there that day. And he came to Racing for Recovery and he got help. And he just called me today. I'm not kidding you. He
That's amazing.
today because he now works for the electrical union and he's looking for an agency to send people to who are battling drugs and alcohol with. And I told him, I said, dude, I'm doing a radio interview today. And if I get a chance, I'm going to tell this story. And you just walked me right into that.
That is so cool. I'm so glad that I felt inspired to discuss that.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What a small and the connections of that specific night in
yeah,
particular of your whole history.
it's unbelievable. So when you were asking me about, well, what was the catalyst? It was that moment when I got arrested. I think I drank into the next day or something, and I was listening to Bon Jovi's "Bed of Roses," living with my grandma, and she came in, and I remember finishing. It was either a Moosehead or a Heineken. I don't remember which one, but I put it down, and I was like, "That's it." And I knew two things. One, I was done with that lifestyle. And two, I was going to do something. I had no idea what that something was, but I knew I was going in another direction. And I can proudly and gratefully sit here and talk about it with you today. And that's literally what happened. I made a cognizant choice to stop using drugs, and I've consistently made that choice for over 32 years in sobriety. And this is what happens when you stop using drugs, man. It's not rocket science, right?
I think that's incredible. And it's huge because I've noticed that with my own battle with addiction is that times that I tried to quit something, it was always more effective if whatever I had left, I walked away from or I dumped out, flush it all, get rid of it. Because in your mind, psychologically, the next time you pass the store, you're like, no, I don't want alcohol. I dumped out what I had.
Yeah.
Because if you finish every drop of everything, there's always that sense of needing more, but you set your drink down and said, I'm done with this. There
Yeah.
was that definitive moment, and that's what I wanted to know. That's beautiful. That's incredible.
It
32
is.
years. That's phenomenal. And the life that you have to be able to help inspire others is you're living out your dream. It's beautiful.
I appreciate that, my friend. And it's different. And you use the word want. There's a difference of saying, I don't want to do this anymore versus I can't. I can't drink. I can't do drugs. It's like, well, yes, you can. You actually can go get drunk right now. And I'm glad you said that, we don't want to do it. When you
Okay.
don't want to do it, it's calm. There's no battle.
Yeah.
You want to do them still, and you're forcing yourself not to. That's a that's a whole other level still. It's a winnable battle. I'm not saying you can't win that battle, but it's less of a battle to just, I don't want to do this anymore, man. And that's the end of it, right? It's the
Yeah.
end of it. Yeah.
Yeah, your why has to be stronger than your how. You have to have something that you want more. And one thing that I noticed that helped me, and I'm not sure if, and most people, like you said, when you were watching the Iron Man, you said, I'm going to do that someday. And I think that that's important because in my mind, like I told myself while I was battling addiction, listening to radio shows, someday I'm going to have a talk show on the radio while I was battling my addictions. And here I am doing my dream with you. And it's incredible, both of us having those prior addictions to be able to come to that point. But for those out there who may be struggling with addiction, my advice to you is you have to envision yourself
Mm,
sober first
mm,
and what your life can be like and how your relationships are going to change, how you're going to change, how mentally you're going to be happier, and then emotionally feel as if it already happened and focusing on that positive emotion can start to do the rewiring and say, okay, how would that version of myself act? and then start acting that way, start talking that way, start walking that way, start exercising as if you're going to do an Ironman in 2 weeks, right? In preparation. And then when it's the day of the race or the day of the show or with the day, to compete, you're already ready because you've been walking the path and doing it. And it's the same way with sobriety. You have to have the mental preparation and understand the tricks that your brain will play on you with psychology. One of their traps, essentially, like especially with alcohol. If you're like, oh, well, I'm not going to buy it. Well, I might want it later. So, oh, I'll just buy it and save it. And within seconds of you getting home, you crack it open. It's like those stupid justifications of, oh, the store's going to be closed later. The fear of being without that and the fear of not fitting in while everyone else is doing it. And I use this little trick if it may help anyone. I just tell myself I'm allergic to alcohol. And that way other people can do it. It's totally fine. But my body responds to it differently. And I'm allergic to it. It affects my brain. It throws everything off. It's not worth it. And
Yeah.
so that way it just released that desire. And focusing on helping other people, like I'm sure you can testify to how much that changes your frequency and having that being able to watch other people's lives blossom as you continue with your work. And I think that part of the reason why you've been so successful is your authenticity and like your level of empathy because you are very you are your authentic self and you're completely empathetic of what everyone else is going through. And that's what I try to embody. That's why I told you before the show, a lot of the things that we align with and the way that we act and focus on in our meetings, the principles align very similarly. And we can get more into that later in the show. I just want to remind our listeners really quick, you are listening to KNSJ 89.1 FM. This is Alive to Thrive. We're honored today to have guest Todd Crandell with us. We are discussing addiction and the pathways to overcome addiction into success and living the fullest life possible. So to get back, I'm getting a little ahead of myself because I want to get into Racing for Recovery. You're a nonprofit, but I wanted to address earlier in your story. So, after you made that decision and you walked away, I'm sure you noticed the first few times that you're around alcohol, it's kind of like a test. And then it's that habit becomes consistent. Was that ever a battle for you, or was that definitively did you already have, how long did it take? I know you said that in one of the videos I saw that it was 6 years before you did your first Ironman. So was there something else in your life that you focused on during that period of time?
I've never had a desire to drink or do cocaine or anything since the day I stopped it. April 5th, 1993, when I put it down, that's it. I've literally had no cravings, no, oh God, I wonder what, that's it. What I did notice was, and this is important for people newly into this,
Mhm.
when they talk about, change your environment, they're not kidding. I didn't know what to do. So I was hanging out with a lot of my old hockey buddies who drank. Some of them had problems, some of them didn't, just because I was used to that and hadn't yet built this different lifestyle. And after a while of going out and I was having, my dinner and drinking water and watching these guys drink, it started to dawn on me like, why am I doing this? I don't need to be in this environment anymore. And I pulled out of it. And that was an interesting period for a while because I kind of felt like, like I was out there on my own island for a while. Beautiful island, but I was still
Mm.
by myself and I just needed to have some more people come over to my island a little bit and start getting used to living in this, paradise, if you will, using Kona as a metaphor for that. And that was an adjustment period. You were asking me about what I did between those 6 years and doing Ironman. I played hockey again. I picked up, I don't want to call it a career, but I picked up playing hockey again and played at the East Coast hockey level, which is like the third tier in professional hockey, just to kind of answer the what if questions. I was
Mhm.
very active in weightlifting. So I've always been physically active. So hockey and weights were a big part of my first 6 years into sobriety. And then that's when I decided when hockey was done, I'm like, let's go back and revisit that Ironman thing back when I saw during my addiction. And that's when I just changed gears and got into Ironman.
That makes perfect sense because mentally you're reprogramming your mental processes to learning endurance, to doing weightlifting, to doing training, to get the programming of enjoying the workout and going through it. Um, with when it comes to the endurance during the Ironman, is there something that you focus on that get you through those hard moments that you're battling? I imagine your wife and your kids would be a huge inspiration, but is there certain techniques that you use to work through enduring that all those miles consistently?
You know, boy, you're asking some phenomenal questions. I really appreciate that. The the
Thank
the
you.
the mental fortitude of an Ironman is applicable to life. And that's what I want. People don't understand a lot of times, like why I do the Ironman and what the Ironman is. Yes, it's a physical event, but to me, it's a mental event. It's a mental event. It's an emotional event, and it's applicable to everything we're doing in life. If you want to go back to school, if you haven't been a student for 15, 20 years, that's an Ironman. You want to take on a new career, that's an Ironman. You want to build your relationship, that's an Ironman. I'm unfortunately I got divorced a couple of years ago because some of these issues that I hadn't quite dealt with, they came back into my life and they caused some problems. And unfortunately, I'm not married anymore, but I do have those beautiful kids, and I respect my former wife greatly for her support along the way. But what I'm trying to get at is when I'm out there and it gets hard, as life's going to get hard, I think of the blessings I already have. I think of the goals that I want to do. And you can take of things from the past, reaching for the future that helps you cope with the present. And that's how I cope with not only finishing an Ironman, but in life. Because, you mentioned winter's going to come. You can hear all these analogies: when life punches you in the mouth, get back up, or whatever the analogy is. But that's what life is. In our More Than One Way to Get to Cleveland book, we talk about the four big ideas. One, we can get off of drugs. Two, we can achieve anything in sobriety. But number three, we're not immune to life's hardships. They're going to come. But number four, I don't have to use drugs to cope with these hardships that will eventually lead me to more success. And that mindset is an Ironman mindset. Look at you. You wanted to be a radio host. You're doing it.
Yeah.
Nobody handed you that. You worked at it, you endured some of the hardships, and here you are with your own show.
Yeah, it's incredible when we tell people our stories and we try to enlighten and that seeing that light turn on of you really can achieve anything. And I love that. Getting off drugs isn't just the first step. That's, you can achieve anything as soon, and that's what going through withdrawals and going through that, it's huge to teach people, like have a goal in mind that you can focus on that will help you through those dark moments. And for me, I tried to look at it as my central nervous system's coming back online. So all the cold sweats and all the flushing and all of that, it was like my central nervous system's coming back online. This is a good thing. I can feel alive again, because I think people going into those situations thinking I'm dying, it just empowers that mentality of self-destructive behavior. But I love the fact that you compared to Iron Man and that same mentality that you can use that in life. And that's really profound.
Well, let's put this into perspective, right? If and I'm sure somebody's watching this who's probably not in their best condition, right? If you can do addiction, you can do sobriety.
Yeah,
Because and I'm sure you'll attest to this. Being a drug user is harder than dealing with life's hardships without drugs. For
100%.
for sure.
100%.
Hard work to stay
Yeah.
addicted. That is a full-time job that pays nothing.
And
And
destroys all your relationships.
of course, you're
Yeah.
everything. That's a full-time job that pays you nothing. When you invest in yourself in sobriety, it pays you everything that money cannot buy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And when and like envisioning the bond and healing those relationships, because I think people get trapped in that mentality of the past. And that I have a saying that, accept the past, embrace the present, enjoy the future. It's a three-step plan. You can't have one without the other.
Mhm.
Because until you accept the past, you can't fully embrace the present. And then, unless you're embracing the present fully, you're not going to have a future you enjoy because the future is the present, essentially,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think mentality and mental fortitude is a huge part of it. And that's one thing that I wanted to mention, on racing recovery. And I could share my screen and show, uh,
Wow.
some of your principles of what you follow. It's not as much like AA, but you have 10 principles that you follow. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that?
The 10 lifestyles of recovery. I don't have regular glasses on, so I won't be able to read whatever you're sharing. Yeah, the 10, here's one thing I want everybody to understand. I don't copy other people's programs. I don't steal art that's not mine. And when I put Racing for Recovery together, I did not want to be anything negative towards the traditional ways of doing anything. That's not what I was trying to do. I look at the traditional ways of doing things as one good piece of pizza. I want the whole pizza. And I
Yeah.
not only want the whole pizza, I want to own the franchise and deliver it globally. So again, nothing wrong with the traditional ways that have been doing things. I'm not saying that. I'm not here to battle anybody on that. I'm just saying that I look at this as like a pizza that you can make your own way. If you don't like mushrooms, you can put, tomatoes on it or whatever. That's the point of what we're doing. So with respect to the 10 lifestyles, they're basically about understanding why we became addicted and how to utilize proper things in our recovery that are going to help us get to where we want to be in life. That it's more uh, positive focused, using friends and families, using arts and literature, coping effectively. These are the things that are going to help people to get to where they want to be. There's one of our clinical counseling rooms right there with the
Yeah, I thought
quality.
I was gonna pull up just some of. I know that these aren't the official uh, steps, but just thought it'd be good to have in the background while you were discussing it. But if you want, you can take us through your website, or if you wanted to share your trailer, or I can include those things in the description of the show.
Yeah, put it. I mean, this is great what you're doing. I've never actually had somebody do this type of interview like that, but yeah, they
Okay.
that shows people what it's like to be in treatment at Racing for Recovery. That big, huge table that is specifically designed for 24 people receiving services and then two clinicians. We have two of those rooms like that. Then we have a giant support group meeting room where we hold our live stream support group meetings that anybody can watch every Thursday night at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on our Facebook and YouTube pages. So that's just a look of what Racing for Recovery looks like. There's another shot. It's like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the NHL and Sports Hall of Fame all in one facility.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's not it doesn't look like a clinical setting. It's a lifestyle enhancement place. There's one of our gyms, one of two gyms that we have. We have a plant-based kitchen. We have spiritual meeting rooms. There's our live stream support group meeting in action on the left there. Every Thursday night, people can come in and get a plant-based dinner and then join the live stream and just be a part of total wellness and living.
It's incredible. I actually watched last week's live stream, and that's one thing I wanted to touch on was your different approach. I immediately just could feel the sense of everyone involved, just how calm and connected they all felt, and that they came consistently every week because of how welcome that they felt. That people of different faiths were all welcome there. That everyone, it was a safe space. Like at the beginning, you were like everyone's here to respect each other. That it was just, and also focusing on achieving and where you're going instead of focusing on the past and the mistakes. And that's where I've struggled with AA was because everyone would show up and they would talk about all what a failure they were, right? And it's like I want to focus on, this is where I'm headed, this is where I'm going. It's good to know like you have the community of people to help support everyone else, and you're all going to succeed together. And with a plant-based diet, which is helping everyone's physically as well. But I just find that like huge. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show because I feel like that approach is essential and why you're being part of why the main racing for recovery has been such a success.
Well, you said it very well. When I was going to the traditional meetings, when everybody went around the room and it was just, I'm Tom, I'm an addict. I'm Sally, I'm an addict. I'm so and so, I'm a dope fiend. And it's just like your name and then some negative connotation with it. And I'm like, no, man, people, if you're not using drugs anymore, to me, you're not an addict. And
Yeah.
with all due respect, I don't even think you're a recovering addict. You're a person that's living, you're a person that's thriving, right? So we just want people to say their name, why they've chosen to join the Racing for Recovery meeting, and what they want to get out of the meeting. And it's all a positive manner. I'm not saying that addiction is sad and there's hardships and depression. I'm not saying that. I am saying it doesn't always have to be like that. People recover. Our slogan is with sobriety, anything is possible. And we're a living, breathing example of hundreds, if not thousands of people who have been affected by this program for almost a quarter of a century that are truly out there thriving. I'm going to keep using your awesome word, thriving, you know? Yeah.
Well, and I could tell the energy of the people that they were thriving and the emotionally that they were thriving. And that's huge to be in an environment that you feel comfortable in. And it helps. Like for people that are struggling, if you have a group that you're meeting with every week, it does help. It absolutely help to be able to have someone's congratulate you on 30 days, that can understand the battle to congratulate a year with. And community is huge for atmosphere. And if you are struggling with something, you have that support of people that you can turn to work through things. But part of what I love about what you're doing is helping people discover their purpose. And that's big at what I try to teach people that are struggling is if you know what your true purpose is and you're authentically working towards that purpose, you will have the needed drive and motivation to work towards what you're going to. Whether that's music or art or writing or exercise, find something. You also, I mean, I would say exercise is a given, and you can do other things on side of that. That's your purpose. But just because of all the health reasons of exercise. But give us more of your thoughts on that and ways that Racing for Recovery helps people support them in those different aspects.
Well, I'll give you an example. We had a couple that came in, Dean and Samantha. They're actually featured in our new documentary. They came in with trash bags with their clothes, with their
Oh yeah.
essence in a bag. Dean now they went through our program. Dean was a chef, still is a chef, but he was a chef in the wrong industry.
Oh, okay.
Didn't want it. And I said to him one day, I go, how about you be a chef and help me get the plant-based kitchen that we were talking about doing? And it changed his whole outlook. So he
Wow.
took a talent that he already had that just wasn't in a proper environment, and he's thriving. There's that word again. He's
Yeah.
thriving now being the chef in our own plant-based kitchen. In addition to that, his wife Samantha went back and got her education and got licensed. She works for us with us. And they also bought one of our former rental houses. They bought it from us. So now they're homeowners as well
Wow.
and proud parents,
That's incredible.
so there again, I think a lot of people will think, oh, I can't pick up the guitar or I can't be a chef anymore because that's what I did when I was doing drugs. And I'm like, no, pick up the guitar. Just don't go sit in a bar drinking with everybody anymore, right? Or
Yeah.
cook in a plant-based facility. I mean, let's use your talents in an environment that is conducive to your well-being. And that's where people start to really shine.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's such a phenomenal example. And what a life-changing impact. Like that is so inspiring. That um and you said it perfectly. Like it doesn't matter if because people are going off their previous programming of habits and behavior. So they're saying I can't do that because that's not, if you ask a child, can you play the guitar? They're like, I don't know, I haven't tried yet. If you ask an adult and they're like, no, I don't play guitar, right? Because
Yeah,
they've told themselves no so
right.
many times. They've literally jailed themselves mentally from going forward and accomplishing things because they programmed themselves, or someone's told them in the past that you're never going to do that, and they believed it. Yeah,
I'm going to take this a step further. I told you that sports and
please
music,
do.
right? So Dean, our chef, yeah, he came in, his neck was actually broken from a car
Wow.
accident under the influence, but he's a big Pantera and Metallica fan.
Yeah.
So I took him last summer. We went to Chicago and we met Pantera. So we have a big picture of Dean and I standing with Pantera that's blown up and framed in the kitchen. And we saw Metallica and had a great weekend in Chicago. And that, I was telling him, I'm like, now do you understand what I was trying to tell you on day one that you came in here? And I have another former client who's with us out here in Hawaii right now. It's the same thing. That is one of the biggest thrills that I get is to bring people into racing for recovery when they are hopeless and in despair and just watch that transformation occur where they get to travel to places they never thought they would. They have education they never thought that they'd have. Their kids are back in their lives again and they're being happy and healthy, productive members of society. What a rush.
That's incredible. And it all starts with, he had to take a leap of faith in coming to get help in the first place. And I think that that's where people, that aren't getting help don't understand is that there's a whole host of people out there that truly care that will help you and want to help you, And before I moved to San Diego and was doing a homeless ministry and like helping give out food to the homeless and things like that. I had a very sad outlook, and even before doing all the shows I've done with homeless nonprofits, I had a sad outlook. Like no one's helping all these suffering people. But the more people I got to know, there's thousands of people that want to help those who are struggling. That that's what they feel like their purpose is to help people who are struggling. Just like it's our purpose to help people who are struggling with addiction. And for anyone that may be struggling out there, it's just a matter of taking that first leap of faith. And then once you start to see the compounding of how wonderful things can be, you have those experiences like you described. And that emotional impact of him going to that concert and seeing he can enjoy life sober, that must have been transformative for him.
It's awesome. And it,
Yeah.
here's the thing too, and I'm going to be a little bit, well, I'm going to be me and be direct. No one's going to hand you the life that you deserve. Now, notice I said deserve. Everybody deserves to have a better life, but not everybody chooses to consistently put in the work that it takes to experience that life that they deserve. And just because you've been sober for 6 months, or maybe it's even been 6 years, that doesn't mean you'd be able to have a mindset of, well, this should happen because I'm 6 years sober. This
Yeah.
should change because that doesn't work that way. If you don't have it yet, and notice I said yet, everything I'm saying is positive, but it's very firm and direct. If you don't have it yet, maybe that means you're not ready for it. You haven't done enough what it takes to have it. But when you keep going in a consistent manner, you will get there. And when you get there, you probably won't even fully understand that you got there at that point. And I can testify to that. I used to ask myself, well, when's this going to happen? When's this? And when I stopped doing that and just living in the moment while I was grinding away at the ultimate goal, things were more doable. I'm not saying they were less arduous, but it was calmer and things were happening more effectively than when I was trying to force it. You can't force this. You can't force time. You have to allow time to work for you in recovery, but patience is something that people like us don't necessarily have. When you apply patience and consistency with effort, you're going to get somewhere. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. Consistency is key.
Good word. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just want to remind our listeners, you're listening to KNSJ 9.1 FM. This is Alive to Thrive. Remember, we're not on this earth merely to survive. We're alive to thrive. We're honored to have Todd Crandell with us and the founder of Racing for Recovery. And we're discussing Ironman. He's running his 124th Ironman tomorrow and the keys to maintaining life of sobriety and thriving. Um, there's a lot that we've discussed, so it's kind of all hard to punch into 15 seconds. But this has been such a fantastic interview, and I'm so grateful that we were able to have you on the show. We have roughly 15 minutes left. Are there any key points that you wanted to get to or that you might feel inspired to share that we haven't gone over yet?
I do. I want to shamelessly promote our 6 books. And I feel weird doing that, but I want to. I want to promote our books because they're not just your typical story of I smoked a bunch of crack and ended up living in my car. They talked about the neuroscience in the brain when you're changing those neural pathways. We have a plant-based nutritional book. We have some information that is unique in the recovery field with respect to overcoming trauma. And I just want to put those out there. I also, again, want to promote our live stream. It's a free live stream. We don't charge money for that. We don't even pass the hat at our support group meetings because this isn't about money. Podcasts that are available showcasing success stories and how other people have done their journeys here at Racing for Recovery. So a lot of free services that are available to people. Also, if you're looking for recovery housing, we have that in Toledo, Ohio. So if you're watching this right now and your life's not where it wants to be and you've been affected by trauma and chosen drugs as a coping skill, give Racing for Recovery a chance to help you. You won't be disappointed, that's for sure.
That's incredible. And I love the fact that your services are free. I can say for myself watching the live stream, it was awesome. Like I recommend that personally. Because I think I love the fact that you do it live on the rate every week online because for a lot of people it's hard to get in the room, in front of other people. But if they can at least get comfortable sitting on the computer and maybe not, and not interacting, but just being a part of it, that I've heard studies where they scan the brain and they showed pictures of faces and pictures of places, and then they scan the brain again, imagining the faces and the places, and the same parts of the subconscious mind lit up because it is blind and what we tell it, it will believe, whether it's truth or a lie. So when people go through life and they're focusing on fear and negativity and dwelling, I'm angry because I drink and I drink because I'm angry, that negative mentality or I'm depressed and I do drugs because of it, because I do drugs, I'm depressed, it's these negative cycles, but breaking that and those new habits, I think that watching, those online is training the subconscious of being comfortable of what emotions would take place if I was sitting in that room, what might I feel inspired to share, and write those things down and then process through it and go to a group and possibly share, It's a good gap on that in between that I just wanted to acknowledge.
I appreciate that. And one thing we haven't talked about is it's not just for people who have drug or alcohol problems. The families are welcome in there. That's
Oh,
one of the things
fantastic.
that started Racing for Recovery. I wanted it to be applicable to everybody who's been affected by addiction. I don't believe in, families go to this meeting, cocaine users go to this meeting. It's like, let's get everybody together so each side can have empathy and compassion for the other side and learn from the other side as they get to also share their side of the story. And that makes a more cohesive healing environment. So the family aspect of Racing for Recovery is half of our point of what we're doing. So, and
That's
I'll share
huge.
this too. Sorry, Mitch. The first night I remember years ago, we had a mom came in with her son and they sat at different areas of the support group meeting. that son now has done 7 Ironmans with me, and he works at Racing for Recovery, and their family is healed. So I'm not
Wow.
saying that your family has to do Ironman, okay, but I'm saying bring your family to Racing for Recovery and watch what it does for your entire family. It works miracles.
That's huge because the way addiction affects families and the fractures that can take place because of mistakes that are made or different repercussions. The ripple effects of addiction, naturally, it causes trauma and affects our family members as well. So for you all to come and heal together, that's incredible. Is that the same person that in your documentary, your most recent documentary that you had interviewed, that
Yeah,
you're
it's
training in the
Shane.
pool?
Yeah, it's Shane. Yeah, you've done your homework, brother. I like it.
Absolutely.
Shane, we did Ironman Chattanooga together a couple weeks ago, but his mom she's a character. And
Yeah.
they show her in the film too, but yeah, they came in and I remember, I'm going to elaborate on this. His mom was pouring her heart out. That first support group meeting, I looked at Shane. He was sitting in the back corner. I remember it like it was yesterday. I go, "Do you hear your mom right now? Listen to your mom, and just let that sink in." It wasn't to beat him up. It wasn't to belittle him. It was really to get him to look at what he was doing. And if you watch the film, his storytelling of his moment where his mom saved his life it's riveting. So the Racing for Recovery new documentary is on Amazon, in Japan and Spain and France. So wherever you are, you can see that new movie. Check it out. It'll do some good for you.
I completely agree. That's actually how what linked me to you and why I reached out to you for this show is that I saw that documentary and I was so inspired by the work that you were doing. I wanted to talk to you and hear your how you would like to help guide people in moving forward, and just pick your brain a little bit about, those different times of your life and what led you to where you're at. And so, what are your goals for the future? I know that you have an upcoming book coming out that would you like to discuss that a little bit?
Yeah, the new book is a scientific what is it? What am I trying to do with this next book? I'm trying to do my best to take science to validate what I've been doing for 32 years in recovery. So, I can talk all this stuff and I'm living it and I can show it in examples, but I want to put some science behind it. And it's going to be like our Do No Harm book is all scientific facts, and it's 500 and some pages about the facts of plant-based nutrition.
Wow.
Book we're working on is going to be a monster of factual things in the brain and in the body about all the things that we're talking about today. So if you don't want to believe folks like yourself and me, listen to the physicians that can put some science behind this stuff, and it's pretty powerful. Some of the posts I've been putting on social media are excerpts from it, and it's hitting with people. So I'm looking forward to that coming out probably late October. That one will be out. So look for that coming. Yeah.
That's really exciting. And I think people neglect that a lot, that what you're eating truly does become a part of you. The cells that are replenishing themselves, like the food that you're feeding it is not just fuel, but it literally you become what you eat. And so you want to make sure that you're sourcing things that aren't, genetically altered and or GMOs and preservatives and food dyes and all that stuff. It's horrible and causes all these health problems. And it's terrible when people are taking, this is just my own personal opinion, all these pharmaceuticals and then for an issue, and then they go back into the doctor because of one of the side effects and get another pill with more side effects. And before they know it, they're taking like 15 pills when it's like, take vitamins, take vitamins, do things like give your body the necessary things that it needs. And that way you actually can thrive because the food that we're being fed, I personally believe doesn't have the nutrients it needs, depending on where you're getting your food. But yeah, I think that eating healthy is huge. And so I'm glad that you're addressing that. And I did see one of your posts this last week. And one thing that I really appreciated was how much you discussed when you're going through transformation and feeling living and like emotionally connecting with where you're going.
Yes,
Yeah,
100%.
that's huge because feeling that really plants those seeds in your subconscious to bring it to fruition.
You know that God, I've really enjoyed talking to you today. You talk about this is helping me to get ready for tomorrow in a very calm way. But back to the nutrition.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure talking to you. Seriously.
That means a lot. It's been a
The
pleasure chatting with you as well.
we'll stay connected for a while. I know that, but I appreciate the food stuff because I get asked all the time, dude, you're 58 years old and you're doing these Ironmans. How do you do that? And when I'll try to tell them, it's like, look, man, it's what I eat and what I don't eat. There's this instant, well, what are you talking about? And I'm like, it's not about running, biking, and swimming. It's about what I'm eating before I run, bike, and swim.
Yeah.
That's what makes the difference. The energy that I have because of what I eat and what I don't eat, the mental alertness, the all of it. It's from what we're putting in our bodies, and there's no money in health, right? There's no
Right.
money in health. There's money in pain and misery, and it's just recidivism, and I'm like, you guys come over here, invest in your health. It's not a cost, it's an investment. Big difference.
Absolutely. I noticed recently that patent is just like patient. And all the patents of all the pharmaceuticals, they test on all their patients. There's just one more, I don't know, I just found that weird. Um, but yeah, how do you feel with the last few minutes of the show, with the spiritual aspect? In healing, what techniques do you use? Do you use like to get yourself in the right frequency? Do you use breathing techniques? Like I've heard that breathing twice through your nose and then out through your mouth a few times clears out the carbon dioxide. Are there certain techniques that you'd like to share in our last minutes?
You just mentioned one. I by no stretch of the imagination am I Mr. Know-it-all. I'm on a constant quest of learning and getting better. And deep breathing and meditation has been something I've been working on for a long time, really doing my best to just calm the mind. It's not about eradicating a thought, it's about changing the thought, right? If you get a negative thought, it's okay to have a negative thought. How do you turn that into a positive one? Deep breathing, especially when you're running. I know for me, it's 2 in through the nose, long out through the mouth. Deep breathing, even to start the day, to go to sleep. Sleep is another thing we really didn't get into, but proper sleep is essential. Again, something I'm still working on getting better at. So the never ending effort to get better with meditation, with sleep, with nutrition, with exercise, with education, that's what we're here to do. You brought it up earlier. When you die of natural causes, I'll put a sticker on your box that says you're cured. Until then, we're all in the same boat, man, fighting the same battle, right? Nobody's cured, nobody's perfect. We're all students in this game of sobriety and just willing to get better.
Absolutely, 100%. I'm so glad and honored that we were able to have you on the show today. And for those of you watching, if there's anyone struggling, remember, do not avoid your problems because you get pulled into a void of procrastination and trapped in hesitation. Face your problems head on, tackle it so that you can change your habits and make tomorrow a new day, transform your life so you can be alive to thrive. We have about a minute left. I just want to thank you again so much for coming on the show. I would love to stay in touch and talk to you more about starting foundation. I want to start a recovery center myself. And so I would love to stay in touch and talk more. Would you like to share any more information about how people can get in touch with Racing for Recovery while we wrap up the show?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Racingforrecovery.org, 419-824-8462. Sober Ultraman on Instagram. I answer everything myself. So get a hold of us. We're here to help, and we'll definitely be in touch, bud.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning into Alive to Thrive here on KNSJ 89.1 FM. Descanso, serving the greater San Diego area. And we'll see you all next week.